Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order Last Days of Europe as Komi, right-wing Komi. In the last video, we pretty much, I believe we finished up conquering the rest of Russia, more or less. So we've taken her all over, and now we just gotta do some focuses, move to Restoration Day. And yeah, we're good from there. We also have to do some of these focuses up here. So I'm thinking we'll go ahead and let's do these two real quick. Let's draft Constitution. So in order to strengthen our hold on the Republic and guide it to a better future, we should draft a new Constitution. This will mark a break with the corrupt old order and let us show the Republic our good intentions. That the drafting process will show us where the prominent voices in our organization land on key issues, and who in our organization commands the influence to push their favorite clauses through is just an added benefit, of course. Very good to see. We'll give that a shot. We got 2 research slots to fill, so let's do... We'll work to the new generation of anti-tank. And, do you want to do anti-air? Let's do anti-air too. Why not? It's gonna take 400 days. That's probably why not. Civilian construction. Actually, let's go ahead and do horizontal industrial organization. Oh damn. They were doing well too, actually. More, but seems they were not long for this world. And there goes the Indonesian War. We prefer independence with poverty to servitude with plenty. The Pacific Allight. For Indonesia versus Indonesia. We'll see what happens there. So we're drafting Constitution. We can scavenge for more loot. I think we're good for now, honestly, because I think all that's going to happen is Onega's going to try to beat us up. So I'm not too worried about that. Let's do a focus on methods next. The breadth of thought in our movement extends to political strategy. While there is a general agreement that we need to be diligent in managing public support and opposition, what measures we should use and where our focus should be is proving to be a difficult discussion. Some believe that information campaigns about great works should be enough to keep the public on our side. Others propose we tie ourselves to much more strongly the Orthodox Church. There's also support for campaigns to suppress dissidents and opposition more forcefully, with disagreements centering more on the proposed extent and violence of them. But it's time to make a decision. So let's do it. Within the shadow of night, Gumalov did not sleep. Instead, while the others slept and the gears turned, he waited. For the others, while there were many more public meetings to come, the first discussion on the new constitution was here. Private, secure, and away from prying eyes. Shafarvik was the first to arrive, a blight grin on his face as he passed into the room like a peacock, strolling with an elegant yet leisurely gait. Gumalov nearly rolled his eyes at the display, for there were no crowds at this hour for him to woo his honeyed words and silver tongue. Greetings were exchanged, and then patience. Next came Sarov, entering slowly and intently as his eyes swept across the room like a wolf eyeing the landscape, or its next meal. Ambition was something all of his guests had, but the former leftists had history they did not. Finally, the final guest slithered in silently, his eyes slit in a smile unnervingly fixed. A reaction Sergei Taboritsky commonly got from those he spoke with was befuddlement at best, and terror at worst. All of his guests would have a say in the paper resting between the 4 men to garner legitimacy for the new state, and all of his guests eyed his position of power eagerly. All would have to be dealt with, but who to marginalize first? Let's tighten Ivan's leash. So we'll have a new focus in a few days, yep. A crucial facet of any state is the structure of economy, and our constitution needs to lay out how we will approach ours. The breadth of thought in our alliance means that there are many competing ideas for how to address this. There's a general agreement that the government needs to be in control of several important sectors in the economy, but beyond that, there is little common ground to be found. A large faction contends that we must allow market forces to operate in non-strategic spheres of the economy. They say greater enterprise would complement their state-run counterparts to provide greater welfare for all. The best way to achieve both would be provisions for private property rights in our Constitution, also specifying that it can be overruled and under what conditions. There are many, however, who believe we can only realize our plans under a total command economy. Everything in the Republic belongs to the whole nation. It's only right that the nation be empowered to mobilize every farmer, worker, and clerk to achieve its aims. Private businesses will always, by their very nature, undermine the same. The Constitution should, according to this faction, define all property as belonging to the state. Taboritsky's faction advocates a third approach. They say that it is these modern economic theories and structures that got Russia to the sorry state. We must cast away these foreign theories and look back to the heyday of Russia. The traditional way of life is what will restore Russia to greatness, and that starts with the economy. The Constitution must empower the state to take any measures necessary to return Russians to where they belong. That works for me. Return to tradition. Alright, so it looks like Sverdlovsk is going to win over here. My money's on... Actually, I don't know who'll win. With more power secured, new options for the future of our state have come to the table as the Constitution begins its drafting. One such debate has recently come into view of our leadership, the role of the central government in relation to various regions. Taboritsky, of course, proposes that the regional administrations hold no power, and only the central government would rule with an iron fist. Shafarvik instead proposes a lighter alternative, federalism, leaving some power in the hands of regional administrators while the central government still rules strongly. Lastly, Gumilov fights strongly for self-determination among these regions, instead forming a sort of confederacy. Tensions increase, but ultimately one side wins the day. Taboritsky. Oh, God. So they're already going right back to fascism. Well, let's have the convention. To an outside observer, the Grand Convention of the Passionary Organization must be a decidedly odd spectacle. The effort to get a big tent party comprising social conservatives, radical Eurasianists, traditional monarchists, and everything in between to agree on a shared doctrine is proving to be a challenge. So challenging, in fact, that an alternative proposal for uniting the parties is quickly becoming the preferred option, called the Convergence. It consists of a vote to be held at the end of the assembly to determine the new leader of the organization and the new head of state. Shafarvik poured himself another drink. Gumilov erased another line he didn't like. Taboritsky accidentally tore another clump of hair from his scalp. Each of these men sat in their own homes, dwelling on the thoughts of the past and the future as they shamelessly tried to throw themselves into projects to distract or alleviate these. Shafarvik knew he had to both make some sacrifices and some compromises to get where he was, at the cusp of power. Yet as he set the bottle down, he couldn't help but worry. He felt what he was doing was for the good of Russia. He swore to himself. And yet he found himself drifting further from his principles as he climbed into the echelons of the party. But damn, it was a long climb. Gumilov, as always did, was polishing one of his rough theories, scribbling on an old sheet of paper on his desk. The time was coming when these would be fact, and he had worked hard to near that occasion. He didn't have the same way with words as his father, the poor bastard, but he was having an easy enough time getting an idea out. Shame they wouldn't stay on the page as he scratched out each halfway decent sentence he wrote. Determination and, for the lack of a better term, passion had brought him to this point, but as evidenced by his writer's block, would it bring him any further than this? Taboritsky, meanwhile, was on a roll. While passion had brought Gumilov to the top and Shafarvik had planned his way there, Taboritsky rose in a frenzy. That was his constant state. He had to be moving, planning, seething. Thus, while the rest of those in the household were asleep, he was tearing through maps ranging from 1600 all the way to 1962. Most of them were wrong. But he continued to look through them, one after the other, over and over, in search of a true monarch of Russia. That was his goal, after all, to rebuild, to grow. Russia, like him, was a controlled frenzy. Tearing, shouting, cutting. Whatever gets you there. So we'll get some options and a focus tree to form the regency. after we figure out our political thing. So I didn't get to take a chance to look at our ministers, so let's do that. We got Pyotr Shabelsky-Bork, a devoted follower, extra political power and stability. We have Andrei Dickey, justify wartime, which doesn't matter too much, and focusing offense. Doesn't matter too much. We have a balanced budget economist, Nikolai Talberg. Extra PP, less consumer goods, more construction speed, and more production efficiency. Beautiful. And then Viktor Aronov, a prince of terror, political power, non-core manpower, and foreign subversive activities efficiency. Not bad at all. Let's go ahead and skip down a little bit. We'll come back to that in a second, but I want to get ready to go right into Restoration Day as soon as we can. So, starting off, Unitary Russia. The state of Bashkir is once more within our grasp, and its armies have been routed before our superior firepower. All that is left to do now is integrate the former Bashkir as a new province within the new Russian state. The new administrative unit shall be named Ufa Oblast. A replacement of the administration shall follow, with Russian language curriculum instated, and a census run to determine the exact population and demographic composition of the region. The mistakes of the past in dealing with the Bashkirs will not be repeated. Well, there we go. We could strengthen more monarchist influence, why not? Just for the heck of it, you know? So yeah, I got work, well, not work this time, I have class starting in another 30 to 45 minutes. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens there. Anyway, our efforts to secure Tatarstan have begun in earnest. The roads are filled with trucks, driving from village to village, tearing down the old Tatar flags and symbols and replacing them with our flag. All seems to be well so far, but an issue has cropped up. The issue of religion. The Tatar people are Muslims, and our soldiers are overwhelmingly not. This has led to much friction, both in the religion itself and at home. 3 distinct wings have broken apart on the issue. The first pushes for an immediate focus on converting the Tatars to Christianity. After all, they claimed, it is our duty as honest Christians to bring non-believers back into the fold. This would be costly and take much time to complete, but could be worth it in the end. The second wing pushes for simply crushing Islam altogether, burning mosques, prosecuting imams, and destroying the religious presence in the area as a whole. This is a controversial idea, but would be easier than conversion, though the Tatars would certainly be unhappy. Finally, some have proposed simply leaving religion untouched, the simplest, easiest option. Of course, with much of the right being religious themselves, this is a controversial position to take. In any case, we must act, and act swiftly. Let's bring them to the light of God. We have a unitary Russia. Let's absorb the tank fleet. The fleet of the assembled tanks and support elements considered by many of our great generals to be the true prize of Nizhny Novgorod, a vast reserve of armored power that can be deployed against our future foes. The bandits controlling the city before us at least had the foresight to hire competent personnel to arm them and keep the factories running. We'll profit from this by extension and mobilize the motor pool of Nizhny Novgorod for the purpose of our state. Well, there we go. Sverdlovsk is winning. Didn't have to do anything this time to change that. It's funny, the last series I did was Vyatka. And for Vyatka, I had to go ahead and do some console fuckery to make things more interesting to go up against in the war in Russia. Meanwhile, here, I don't need to do anything for AI, but it's the first time in a while that I had to really cheat my way to win and get to this point. But you win some, you lose some. Let's control the factories. Whereas the current personnel running the factories in Nizhny Novgorod are at least semi-competent, they are hardly loyal to us and only us. A less charitable state could denounce them as a pack of mercenaries loyal only to profit. In light of this, some changes in their management must be pursued. Rather than following the logic of the bandits' market, the heavy industry of Nizhny Novgorod must be put under our direct control, for the purpose of aiding our sacred task to reunify the motherland. I'll give us 2 extra military factories, which we have plenty of room for them. Ooh, free civilian factories, wonderful. What do we want to work on? Probably some of this. Man, Samara has nothing in the way of factories, so let's work on that. Yeah, damn, their industry is not good there. Build a couple civic factories all across. The Russia remains suspended in anarchy. It's through teamwork that we will escape this dreadful era. Warlords from all different backgrounds await our message. Some may wish for our painful demise, others may seek to form friendship, others only want to maintain a state of peace. Perhaps we can establish diplomatic relations with the other Russian powers, see how they are holding up. When our potential most valuable allies lay on the other side of Europe, our only option is to extend our influence into Russia itself. I'll have to find other partners. Control the factories. Let's go ahead, bypass, breaking Tatars. And now let's get Russians in all but name. The Tatars are conquered once more, and once more their separatist urges are defeated. What the region of Tatarstan truly needs is not autonomy or recognition, but rather total integration. Kazan and the lands around it will be incorporated into our new state wholesale. There will be no native autonomy. For why should there be? The Tatars are merely Russians that have lost their way, and their culture is merely a relic of their collective delusion. We're nearing in on the point of no return. Let's go ahead, get these troops on the Onega front. Let's get some more casts going. And then start on some fighters. Here we go. Victor's truck slid to a halt in the gate of the village, and his men leapt from the back. In a moment they stomped over to the gate, testing it. When they found it was locked, a short burst from a PPSH split the lock apart, and the soldiers marched in, followed by truck after truck. Victor watched his men pull the villagers from their homes, dragging them to the village squares. Soldiers swept the roads, looking for anyone foolish enough to hide or fight. If they hid, they'd catch an extra kick in the ribs before being dragged to the square. If they fought, a sharp staccato fire would be all they received. Eventually, once Victor was satisfied with the number of citizens gathered, he left his truck and marched in front of the local mosque, citizens surrounded by his soldiers. Citizens! From this day forth, you are no longer Tatars. You are Russians. You will speak Russian. You will read Russian. And you will discard your old culture immediately or face punishment. We shall personally see to it that not a single trace of this Tatar culture is shown in this region again. Is that understood? Before the crowds had a chance to respond, Victor waved his arm, and a hail of Zdanov cocktails cracked through the mosque's windows and lit the floor on fire. As smoke began to rise behind him, Victor smiled. His job was complete. We are all Russians, like it or not. Next, let's scour Samara a little bit. Samara is ours, and with it we have secured miles upon miles of fruitful land, dozens of factories, and arsenals flowing with useful equipment. However, we also inherit another less valuable thing. Traitors. Sympathizers with the Russian Liberation Army and the Germans fill our newly occupied territory, and their partisans continue to fight our forces in many areas. The solution to this problem is simple. A grand crackdown on this treason, and no mercy for any poor fool who dares carry on the cause of a dead traitor. We're close. We are very, very close. We have just about a full army of boys. We'll train 3 more. Right here and right now. Battle for Italy. This is certainly interesting. I didn't expect for this to happen. Millennium. We have a few options left, so let's get to the final words. The convergence looms. Lines are being drawn ever more firmly as the party leadership candidates make their last appeals to the voting membership. There are no more debates to be had. No more backroom deals to be made. The 4 men will each make a final speech, and then the decision. The only other question to be decided is who will be the one to speak last. It's the most desired position in order of speeches by all 4 candidates. Whoever secures it will have gained both the prestige of a small victory and the perceived benefit of having the last word before the vote. But who will it be? I think we know the answer to that already. Get some better anti-tank going. And then, the final speeches have been held. It's time for the convergence to take place. 4 men will enter the National Assembly as candidates, each hoping to emerge from the vote as president, ready to guide the passionary to achieve their vision. Only one will succeed. With everything now at stake, tensions are running high. The candidates have all committed to respect the Assembly, but it's anyone's guess how long that respect goes, should the tide turn against them. There was a certain melancholy at that night's National Assembly. Officials shuffled into their seats. Staff made their last preparations, and even the mice in the wall sat silent. It was the last one before true leader Komi, and later Russia at large, would be empowered. With most of the men in the room stubbornly decided on who they supported, some stood in the middle. Thus, while others dozed in waiting for another speech to affirm or ignore their beliefs, some sat on the edge of their seats as they waited for someone to take the stage. And take the stage they did. A man quickly approached the podium to give a last speech. But who? Taboritsky. Nice! 69% support for Despotist. Which one is that? Ooh. Okay. Well, this will be interesting. The struggle over Komi's future took place where so many battles had happened beforehand. The National Assembly. First came Gumilov, surrounded by guards, he and his representatives taking their seats in the center of the assembly. Next came Shafarvik, his men surrounding him, as dutifully as Gumilov's. They took their place to the left of the assembly. There was a short delay before Serov, his men clad in Soviet uniforms with stars ripped off, stepped through the doors. They took their spots between Gumilov and Shafarvik, and the venom began to spit between the factions. Verbal tussles, insults, angry whispers. Finally, Taboritsky's men filled in, taking their seats on the right of the assembly floor. The stage was set for a political explosion of biblical proportions. The only thing to do now was give the speeches, take cover, and wait for the pieces to fall. The fate of a nation rests on shaky ground. It was here. Hours of yelling, of politicians stomping their feet, of passionate speeches and angry rebuttals. A fistfight had even broken out once or twice. After a long, arduous journey, the men and women of the National Assembly rose to cast their votes on who should lead Komi into the future. Gumilov didn't show it, but his heart was pounding against his ribcage as the silence grew. A truck was outside, waiting. In an unlikely case, he lost, and he did not expect to lose. If he won, the plans to dispose of Taboritsky and Serov were clear in his mind, to be executed almost immediately before they could escape. Shafarvik was a different story, but he would get around to him soon enough. Shafarvik hid his face behind his papers to hide his growing fear. Plans swirled through his head, mixing and mashing, an escape plan here, an execution plan there. Whichever one he would need to implement, he was certainly ready. Sorov's ice-cold face didn't betray a hint of nervousness. His mind had filled with plans. Plans to leave, plans to stay. He would win or he would leave, and he suspected the rest of the room felt the same way, as much as they tried to hide their emotions. But Taboritsky drummed his fingers against the table. Could he do it? Could he win? If not, what then? He hadn't thought that part of this all the way through. His half-formed plan ended at leaving the city in a car as quickly as possible. Whatever he did after the vote, he knew it would decide his fate. As the votes were counted, the tensions increased. As it was about to be burst, a man stepped up to the podium and began to read. The winner is Sergei Taboritsky. A stunned silence enveloped the National Assembly as the final result was read. Gumilov rose from his seat, shocked. Oh god, now's not a good time. Shafarvik's eyes widened in astonishment. Serov's face broke for a moment, showing his absolutely confounded expression. For a moment, there was silence in the room. And then everything began to move. Men exploded from their seats, shouting unintelligibly about a rigged vote. Some began shaking down those around them, searching for the traitors to the party, to their leader, to the nation. Others made a beeline for the door. Their hand was played and lost, and the only thing they could do was leave. Still others rushed towards Taboritsky's joyous men, stopped only by a line of policemen and guards separating the groups from each other. The noise echoed off the walls, only escalating into a cacophony of chaos. In the middle of it all, Taboritsky's smile spread across his face. He'd always known he was in the right. He knew he would win no matter what the others thought. Once again, he was correct. Now the rest of the right would see what Sergei Taboritsky really was. It can't be true, but it is. And now it's time for Restoration Day. Today, the most momentous occasion of the history of our new state has arrived. The day of reunification of the territories west of the Urals. Through our labor, blood, and diplomatic efforts, all of West Russia has finally come under the control of our new state. Our vast lands extend from Arkhangelsk to Samara, with a loyal and proud population millions strong. For this achievement, the end of warlordism and Bolshevism in our lands, a national holiday shall be declared, and parades held in all of our major cities. Truly, today is the first step of the rise of a new, proud Russia. It is the day of beginning of the end of the enemies of the motherland. Do we hit the button? I think we'll wait till we do the focus and then we'll hit the button. I better text this guy back real quick. Sverdlovsk has unified Western Russia. Let's do it. The clouds of unrepentant reaction are gathering the vastness of West Russia as the monarchist forces of Ust-Sisolsk defeated their last rivals in the region for sovereignty over the Russians. Headed by the self-proclaimed regent of the Russian Empire, a former Nazi collaborator and monarchist exile, Sergei Taboritsky, the Regency of West Russia dedicated its efforts to the purification of the last strains of the Bolshevik plague, and has been making preparations for the return of Tsarevich Alexei, who allegedly survived the Bolshevik massacre of 1918, to take his rightful place on the Russian throne. As the fancied region continues to impose the old imperial customs with remarkable brutality, the neighbors of Taboritsky's domain, astonished by his zealous fervor, are starting to wonder whether if he can appeal to something more than legitimacy of a Tsarevich, who's been dead for several decades. Life for the Tsar and his blessed regent. Here we go. Well, here we are, boys. I think the most appropriate thing to do right now is to just invade, because I think that's the most accurate thing for the roleplay purposes. Okay, first off, let's finalize the industrial policy. The industrial base of Western Russia has developed since the West Russian War, despite Bukharin's disastrous policies. However, it's not developed in a sane or consistent manner. Various warlord states' grandiose industrial visions have been carried out in clashing contradictory ways, with redundant supply chains and technologies intended to make use of domestic resources. One of the most critical economic issues we face is binding all of our regional economies together, making use of the enhanced economics of scale, and working to ensure that functional and efficient logistic networks are operational. Again, now the research slots, let's get working on, what do we want? Better artillery. Ooh. Yeah, let's do some civilian industry now. Get the extra factories in the state. Uh-oh. The fate of Western Russia was sealed not on any particular day, but through a slow, gradual process. Few noticed anything different at first. Sergei Taboritsky was known for his authoritarianism and harsh dictates, after all. It was no secret there were a few lines in which he would not cross in the pursuit of his dream. The true secret, visible only in hindsight, was that, to the self-proclaimed regent, those lines never existed in the first place. As the shadows lengthened, those who were overtaken by the darkness sensed the beginning of something terrible. Dissidents, once arrested and put through due process, began to simply disappear. The faces of Taboritsky's soldiers hardened, taking on a cruel aspect. Instructions to his citizenry became increasingly terse and cold. People whispered fearful wisdom to one another, spreading tales of arbitrary punishments delivered without mercy or hesitation. Changes came gradually, but the day on which a protest was met with phosphine gas and the deadly rattle of machine guns was the final turning of the key. The clock chimes a hollow note, hailing the dawn of a new day. The sun rose, but cast no light upon Russia, for it was as black as pitch, and wreathed in the umbral halo of unbidden nightmares. Darkling skies settled over Darkling skies settled over the motherland, and all creation trembled. Abandon all hope. Ladies and gentlemen, Sergei Taboritsky. The mask has finally slipped, and the clock now ticks ever forward. Sergei Vladimirovich Taboritsky, formerly the dark horse of the Passionary organization, has finally secured control of the state, and his plans for its future could not be any more disturbing, at least to his many detractors. Once again harnessing the talents of oratory that ensured the relevance of his society for the restoration of the Russian Empire, even when, by all accounts, it should have been entirely subsumed by the large organization, he's now announced at the very restoration, claiming to rule as regent for Tsar Alexei II, who he states escaped execution by the Bolsheviks long ago. He routinely issues thunderous appeals to those traditional values and imperial nostalgia, and couples these appeals with open and extremely virulent anti-Semitism. To those supporters, relatively numerous as they may be, it is as if God himself descended in the form of Taboritsky from heaven in order to save the empire. To everyone else, he's an abject madman, as unstoppable as he is dangerous. His opposition coalesces both within the state and within his own mind. The question is clear. How long until the clock strikes midnight? So I'm curious, we did not get a new focus tree, but we have to be at peace for all of these. So do we get our unique mechanic yet. No, I think it's until after we beat the Onega War. So, forwards, men. Oh. Thank you, America. Very cool. Bennett, what the fuck are you smoking, man? I'm pushing pretty easily right now, actually. There we go. There's only one thing that Finnish people deserve right now, and that's a bullet to the back of their heads. So let's ensure that they get that first and foremost. Do an offensive line. As quickly as we can. Caffeine flow. Toast our future successes. I don't know if anyone should be drinking right now to our successes, but, you know, here we are. Black market trade has increased. Oh, here we are. We have a new focus tree, so let's take a look at it. Ooh, fuck, wow. Let's check the army. Well, let us start with the Grand Regency. We, the rightful regency of Holy Russia, have finally risen. Our enemies crowd around us, but we tread the blessed path. The imperial heartland has been reclaimed in the name of God, Tsar, and nation. The empire yet rises as Lazarus from its tomb. Yet there remains so much more to do. The foundations of our home are riven by rot, promulgated by the unholy degeneracy of Bolshevism, Jewry, and cosmopolitanism. The cleansing fire of our divinely mandated rule must burn away these impurities, and make way for His Imperial Majesty before all hope is lost. I'm waiting for our unique little mechanic to pop up any time now. Kill them. Kill them all. No. I swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Tsarevich Alexei Nikolaevich Romanov, his heirs and successors according to law. So help me God. I swear that I will truly and faithfully execute the office of regent, and I will govern according to law, and will in all things, to the utmost of my power and ability, consult and maintain the safety, honor, and dignity of Tsarevich Alexei Nikolaevich Romanov, and the welfare of his people. So help me God. I swear that I will inviolably maintain and preserve in Russia the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church as established by law, and that the government, worship, discipline, rights, and privileges of the Russian Orthodox Church will be preserved. So help me God. Rise, blessed regent, said the archbishop, placing the regent's diadem upon his newly groomed heir. Taboritsky did so, standing tall and proud before the golden throne, crafted in secret for this very day. Only the archbishop stood between him and absolute power, and now that man stepped aside. Taboritsky stepped forward and took his crown jewels, a scepter for his right hand and an orb in his left, both fashioned of gold and of his own design. He would never assume the imperial crown, but all present would know his absolute power from appearances alone. He turned and sat himself upon the throne of regency, and all before him knelt in sublime submission. God save the regent. For now, let's honor the blessed regent. Some place for trust in money. Some place for trust in weapons of war. Some, wretched beyond all others, place for trust in the iconoclasm of ideology. We, of all the world's nations, know better. We, the Russians, place our trust in Sergei Taboritsky, blessed regent of His Imperial Majesty Tsarevich Alexei Romanov, true heir to the Russian Empire. Anointed with the blood of unbelievers, his reign is divinely mandated by the Lord God and eternally sanctioned in the name of Christ. The Lord has chosen him as his vessel, and the harbinger of eternal return to glory, carrying forth the eternal light of the Third Rome. Only the regent has been imparted with the Lord's own wisdom and power, and only he can truly claim legitimacy over all of the Russias. So shall it be until the Tsarevich is found and restored to his rightful throne. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, get some airplanes over here, because we could probably use some of those right about now. So we'll get some fighters going, get that air supremacy going. Sports rivalry. Why are we allowing sports? The regent lay there in his silken bed, the darkened ceiling swarmed with the telltale lines of a scheme, lines of indescribable color that lanced through his view of a snuffed-out chandelier. They danced for him up there, but he knew that if he stood up, he could not reach them. They were too distant, too far away. Through watching them, he had tracked the progress of his ascension, the trek of Tsarevich, the rightful heir, from Ekaterinburg. They stood fast, however. Where had he gone? Would he not have disappeared if he died? For the sky tracks the immortal soul, not the fallible body. To the regent, that was the mystery of it all. In the lines, he could watch them. How could he know who was plotting against him, who was secretly calling him a madman? On those threads, he saw himself binding them, giving the attention to on the Akrana, until they told him all of what they had done, of what they could do, who they were. No matter how careful the lie, or how much the liar begging that he was innocent, he saw the pattern, the weave of heaven. He blinked, and for a moment he saw a flash of inspiration, something new moving in the sky, and a new line. He twisted around his mind and let the gaps be filled. It was something new interlocking around the string, pulling them in, coalescing from dust, hit like his Russia had. A miracle. A loom with which to weave a future. The strings needed an engine to drive them. The regent opened his eyes, gazing around the room. The journal sat on his nightstand, enticing his attention. He knew which way the clock would turn, but to his treasury? The people? The court? He picked it up along with his pen. He would tell them to adjust their habits at once. The letter would be sent in the morning, and they had to know. Connections upon connections. How far do they go? The state runs onwards, powered by the approval of heaven. The scribes and inventors, the bureaucrats and soldiers, they are the components of a state, the force that drives it forward. But to the regent, it would be wrong to call it organic. The state is not a living being. The state is a machine, an engine of infinite complexity, guided by God's will, directed by the monarch's mind, the conduit to heaven. The regent shall see all in his grand state, each cog, each axle, each piston in the grand divine clockwork that drives purity for the Russian spirit endlessly forward. There is never enough to guide. The clock has struck the first hour, slowly slipping forward. The darkness of the red midnight fades away. Our test lies in the distance. Midnight must never be allowed to come.